So Joanne Taylor, welcome to Life in Six Strings. That looks like a backstage area. Where are you right now?
It is. It also looks a bit like a prison, actually. Now I've seen it on camera. I am backstage. I'm not in prison.
This
But yeah, I'm in Reading at the Hexagon Theatre.
I love it. Now you've said that, you really do look like you're in
It
prison.
does look a bit, yeah, cell block H.
I
It's
love
fine.
it. Yeah, see, it's not really you on tour, it's a hologram because that's all the thing right now. So yeah,
Exactly.
you are in prison. So obviously you're out there playing the new record live. How's it going down?
It's going really well, actually. We just did about 3 weeks in the States, and then we've done 2 gigs so far in the UK. And it's always a bit scary figuring out how the new stuff's going to go down, and also how it's going to work with previous previous songs, given that I like every album to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems to be going down really well, actually, and noticing a lot of people singing the songs and stuff, which is always cool. So yeah, it's going really well.
It must be a kind of like, you work on this record for so long and then you get out there and yeah, like you say, it's scary. You put
Hmm.
those songs out and then people are singing it back, and that must be really
Yeah,
nice, quite a rewarding feeling.
it is, yeah, because I've noticed most of the people singing back are female as well.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's really nice to think as a female musician, I wrote something that, about a relationship or something I may have gone through that another female has connected with and gotten some joy from. So that's really, really nice.
Yeah, it is. So you mentioned that you like to do something different with each record. I mean, your last one before the one before this was kind of like a straight up blues record, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then this one definitely has different layers to it. So what was the kind of inspiration sonically for this one?
It was really that we'd done, as you just said, we did the blues album, me, Josh, and Joe, and then we did a live version of that blues album. And I've never actually really considered myself a traditional blues artist. I've always said I'm a blues guitarist.
Okay.
But the songs are sort of whatever genre you want to put them in. So I kind of felt like for my career, I'd done the two most traditional blues albums that I'd ever done. So I kind of felt like I could just write whatever I wanted to write and kind of sneak it out and not have
Yeah.
to worry about it fitting in a certain box. So yeah, I just sat down with an acoustic and kind of had fun working with new melodies and slightly catchier stuff and slightly poppier stuff, and it was good fun.
So see, you mentioned Joe and Josh, who are like sort of Batman and Robin at the moment when it
Yeah.
comes to producing, just out there doing everything. I love it. What I mean, you and I both know him as friends.
Yeah.
What's he like as a producer? Because I just
I
can't,
was
I
going to
can't
make so
imagine
many
what
jokes
he's
about
like
what
to
he's
work
like as a
with.
friend because I've never actually met you before, and I've known for years that you know Joe, and you've probably known for years about
Yes,
me being friends with him, but we've never actually got together and had a good
I know.
go and moan about him. So we could.
We need
So
to do
very, very sensible question.
that.
Yeah. As a producer, he's brilliant actually. And I think part of that is because I do know him so well. So there's a massive trust there, which is very important with a producer. I always feel like working with a producer, it's really Joe Bonamassa and Josh Smith are making the Joanne Taylor album they want to make. And when I'm with
Okay.
Kevin Shirley's making his Joanne Taylor album. Else, if I may as well produce it myself. So there has to be, you are a partnership. So there has to be a lot of trust there. And obviously with Joe, I already had that. And they work well together. Joe's sort of I don't want to say boss because that sounds too complimentary. Like Svengali, I don't know. Yeah, he's the angry one in the control room that dictator. That's a good one. Dictates everything, and then Josh is really helpful, and he sits in the studio and kind of manages and directs the band. So they play off each other very well.
So it's like good cop, bad cop type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Joe
good
being
cop,
bad.
annoying cop. I think.
This. Why have we not met before? It's nuts. We could have had a right old laugh.
I feel like he's probably planned that, to be honest.
Yeah. It's like keep those two away from each other
Yeah.
because they're going to be grief. Yeah, no, that's quite funny. So you've got some great names on the record. How did that all come about? The one that sort of stood out for me because I'm a huge fan of hers is Carmen Vandenberg.
Oh,
So
nice.
when I heard that she was on the record, I was like, oh, I'll be intrigued to see where they go with this because she's super, yeah, she is quite rocky, isn't she, on the guitar? So
Yeah, she's a very different player to me.
yeah,
And she's a very different player to most people,
I
actually.
know. I
And she's
love her. I
very
think
much got
she's
her own
so
thing.
underrated.
Yeah, Absolutely. And it was interesting, the track actually, it happened very organically. So backstory, I've known Carmen since she was about 11. I used to babysit her.
You're
Um,
joking.
no, well, she was best friends with Django Stewart, Dave Stewart's youngest son, and they would have been about 12. And when I signed to Dave, I kind of half lived with them because I was only 16 and had moved down to London. So I kind of go to Dave's on the weekend and I'd hang out with Django. And so David and Anushka could kind of go out for the night, leave me with them because I was, legally older. So when I say babysitting, I mean we ate loads of ice cream and watched horror movies. It wasn't
Yeah.
too mature. And then we reconnected some years later in London. So yeah, I've known her for a very long time and kind of, she's like my little sister. So I was actually just reaching out to her because I knew she was in LA and I hadn't seen her since pre-COVID. And it turns out she has an office at Sunset Sound where we recorded. And then I'd written that song, Figure It Out, which ended up being kind of punky. And I just thought actually Carmen would do a lot better with this than me and think of something far more creative than I would. And she did. It's like a solo I would never think of. It's kind of wild. I kind of want to say it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense in the song. She plays in such a weird way, that only she would think of playing that way. So yeah, it worked out really well.
That's a really funny story. I never knew that. I never knew that you babysat her and you've known her forever. That is quite funny.
Yeah.
So was she playing the guitar when you met her?
I can't remember. I don't think she was. She might have been. We didn't really, I don't think we ever talked about it. We just talked about ice cream and we were all super into horror films at the time, like The Ring and The Hills Have Eyes and that kind of 2000 stuff.
Oh my
But
God.
no, I don't actually remember.
Oh, so I wonder, so she obviously knew that you played.
Yeah, so we kind of actually we reconnected in London through a friend of mine called Ian Siegel, who's a blues guitarist on the British scene. And around, I don't know, 10 years ago. We both, what it's like as you are now a female guitar player. Everyone gets mentioned to you. So, my name got mentioned to her a lot and her name got mentioned to me. And it was only when we met that we realized actually we both knew Django and then figured out who each other was. So it was kind of, we had a bit of time apart from each other.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, now that makes sense. And of course, Dave Stewart's on the record as well, which again makes sense.
Carmen link.
The Carmen link. And then when you were 16, he helped propel your career, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a demo of mine. My mum had just had breast cancer and we did a charity gig in aid of breast cancer awareness in Birmingham, and a friend of Dave's was there and passed on like a demo CD that was probably absolutely awful. I think I'd only been singing like a week. But he liked it and signed me to his label, which kind of got me out of school and got me on the road.
Wow. At 16, which is insane.
Yeah. Looking back, it seems normal when it's when you've never known anything else, it seems normal.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I mean, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do then? Like from the moment you picked up that guitar, was it like, oh, this is what I want to do? Or
I knew, and this sounds really obnoxious, but I knew I would be good at it.
Okay.
And I say that because I've never felt that way about anything. I'd always been average at sport, average at, less than average at maths and science. So it was nice to have that one thing and that self-esteem to go like, oh, actually, I'm good at something.
Oh, okay.
So I always knew that. I actually wanted to be a footballer.
Did you really?
Yeah, I wanted to play.
You're like Rod Stewart. That's what Rod Stewart was, wasn't he? Before he wanted to be a footballer, and then he chose.
Yeah, but that didn't work out because being a female footballer at the time wasn't very common. So I decided to be a female blues guitarist because that was sensible.
But that wasn't very common either then.
No.
Even that common now, isn't it?
I'd said nothing about being a sensible child.
Got you, right. Okay. So what was the one thing then that kind of drew you to the guitar rather than say the drums or?
Well, my dad and brother play guitar. So I think it was a large part of being a bit of a tomboy growing up, wanting to be one of the boys. And then really, because I played classical guitar at school, which I was good at, but didn't particularly enjoy. So it was when I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, then it all sort of made sense, really.
Right. Okay. And it's funny that you say you had classical lessons. So you had the traditional classical guitar lessons when you first started. And So did you learn how to read music?
I did, but I can't remember any of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I started on saxophone and got to like grade
Okay.
3, but classically trained. Grade 3 is not that great. But it was, for me, that kind of killed it, because it was too, you just like stuck on this score and you don't think outside of the box, and
That's what it was for
that
me.
score in front of
It was
you.
just too disciplined, and you
Yeah.
had to stay within the lines. And it was so when I started seeing guys like Steve Ray Vaughan or Albert Collins who play in such weird ways, and there was a technique involved, but it was very a unique technique. And it kind of felt like it didn't matter how you played as long as you sounded like yourself and expressed yourself with the instrument. As opposed to, no, this is the sheet music, do this. So yeah, it was that was my experience as well.
Yeah, it's like if you're classically trained, there's rules, but then once you go to that other side, there are no rules. You can, like you say, do what you want. It's funny you mention Albert Collins as well. It was the anniversary of his death yesterday.
I didn't.
Yeah.
November 24th.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I went out, it was 1993, I think, was it?
Yeah, I think so. He was such a
Wow.
he was such I mean, for playing aside, just to look at him, he was like the coolest dude ever, wasn't he? Even like how
Yeah.
he held his guitar up here and then he had the strap just over there.
Yeah, I tried to do that when I was starting out, and it's no, you've got to be a 6'4" Texan to kind of have the deltoid strength to do that. But yeah, and then with the capo and the weird finger picking thing.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw him live, I never actually saw him live. I saw him live on a video, and I'd had the CD and it had female backing vocals going, Mr. Collins, and
Yeah.
he was making his male horn section do it as females.
I love
So
it.
it was just this like crazy, quirky, kind of funky guy.
Yeah, he was. And he'd do that whole thing where he'd be like, like, so how if you've got a
Yeah.
singer and a guitarist, they do that kind of beck and call thing. He was kind of doing it with himself as well, which I remember
Mhm.
seeing him do that and thinking,
You had
that's
some really good way of describing it.
yeah, he's but
Yeah, that's a
when
really good way of describing it.
so did you did this when did the singing come into it for you then? So you started off as being classically trained on the guitar and then discovered Stevie Ray Vaughan, and had you discovered your voice at that point?
No, I knew at some point if I really wanted to do it that I would have to sing. I think you've either got to be exceptional at guitar, a la Jeff Beck, or get in a really good band, or you've got to sing as well. So
Yeah.
I knew, and I kind of wanted to. I'd never done it. I didn't know if I was any good at it. And I definitely wasn't from the get-go. There's some very good videos of me on YouTube when I'm about 17, and I sound like a cast member of Downton Abbey trying to sing the blues. It's just like so solihull schoolgirl posh. It's awful. So it took me a while to get a handle on it, but it was also really good because it led me down a different path because I could copy male guitar players. It's a very gender neutral instrument. But
Yeah.
when trying to sound like Albert Collins or Luther Allison, I had to go look at other music and find female influences, which I think made me the artist I am.
You've got quite a husky voice though, anyway, haven't you? Like it's not like a particularly, I don't even know how you describe it, like female-y.
Yeah, it's not very clean. Well, I
No.
had whooping cough as a kid, and it really
So
tears your
that you've got
throat,
that to thank then.
which apparently Noddy Holder did as well, which I didn't
Oh.
quite get the grid of Noddy Holder, but yeah, I did some scar tissue on there or something.
Yeah, well, it was a blessing in disguise. So okay, so because there you are. So you've been discovered by Dave Stewart. You go out and tour with him. You come back, and then how did you end up in Detroit from Solihull?
Good question. I often wonder. It was basically I was signed to Roof Records, which is an independent German label that gives a lot of blues artists their first start. But Thomas wouldn't tour me in America because it's just too much of an expense and he doesn't really have a network over there.
Yeah.
And I happened to have a support group at a gig in Worcester that were all from Detroit.
Okay.
So I just said, look, if I get a work visa and book the dates myself, could you help me if I route it out of Detroit, get a fan and backline, and could you be my band? Unfortunately, they said yes, and I booked like a little 2-week tour from my mom and dad's house across America, and then left the country before they saw the phone bill. And then I got an agent off the back of that, so we just started touring there more. So it just became an obvious base, and after being there for years and years, I've made friends and family and stuff. So
Yeah, well, you've probably been there longer almost than when you're in the UK. Or
pretty
probably,
much the same, as
yeah.
longer than I've been everywhere, because my parents moved around a lot. So yeah, I think it's the longest I've lived anywhere at this point.
And you're still there, are you?
I'm splitting time now between Detroit and Nashville. I'm right next door to. Have you been to Joe's Nashville
Yes,
place?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, I'm one street over.
Oh, you're joking.
No,
Oh,
it's
that's so
really.
funny. It's a nice area there, actually.
Yeah, it is, and I'm right by the library, so I love it. So I love
Oh,
my
that's
books.
cool. Okay, so yeah, I mean Nashville, I absolutely adore Nashville because it's like a mini LA without all the kind of fakeness.
Yeah, I like. It's got a smaller town vibe to it.
Yeah,
Because American big cities, I love London, but you can walk around London and there's public transport. American big cities don't generally do that.
no.
It's kind of got like a nicer town vibe. You can walk around a bit more.
So what made you move to Nashville then? I mean,
Just it was
stupid question,
business
but
decision really being down there, for co-writers and recording and that sort of stuff. So it's yeah, it was work decision really.
so have you started writing with other? Because it seems like everyone there is a songwriter. Have you collaborated with anyone writing songs for them? Maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get together with Joe actually because we've both got albums coming up.
Yeah,
So yeah, Joe, a friend of mine, Sonia Lee, Bones are there now. So Rosie and Carmen.
I know Sonia Lee.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
my good friend Sonia Lee, she's great. She's opened up for me in the UK a few times.
Okay.
So yeah, there's just kind of like a new wave of us girls out there, and I say Carmen and Rosie from Bones are there as well. So
Oh, I didn't know they were there. I thought they were in LA, so they've moved as well.
they have Rosie moved during COVID, and I think Carmen's technically in LA, but she's kind of splitting time.
Right, okay. So there's a whole movement going on. I love it. That's great. That's
Yeah,
cool.
pretty much.
Great, brilliant. I have to move there. Oh my God, look at this. The sun
Do
comes
it.
out.
Just
Who would
stay
have
at
thought?
Joe's.
Yeah, I know. Imagine. That'd be nice.
I've got the door code.
Pardon?
I've got the door code.
Oh, great. I'll just turn up one day. Hi. How are you? Be like, what?